Hello, my name is Jeremy Bradley. I'm a linguist with the University of Vienna at the Department of Finno-Ugristik Studies, and today I would like to briefly introduce the corpus of literary Mari. The first version of this recently released resource covers over 57 million tokens of literary Medo-Mari texts taken from different genres and representing over 100 years of Mari literacy. And this video and the accompanying PDF document are a crash course in which I will show you some basic functionalities of this corpus if you have never worked with this kind of infrastructure, how you can use it to glean insights on linguistic questions that interest you. And the accompanying PDF document has a list of links that give you additional information on some of the things we're going to be looking at. Got them here. For example, information on keyword layouts and orthographies. Like I'm going to be assuming in this demonstration that you have a way to produce Mari Cyrillic text on your computer, be it with a keyword layout or be it using our transcription software. If you do not, the links are there to help you. Okay, so in any case, when we start our corpus, if you are lucky and if you're an English speaker, and you are lucky, the interface is already going to be in English. If it is not, if it for some reason, for example, is in North Sami or Norwegian, up here we can pick the language of the interface. And you might prefer Russian interface, for example. But for now, I'm going to be using the English interface. Here we can see what resources we currently have in our text collection. Here you can see the genres we have: nonfiction, fiction, law, science, news, and Wikipedia texts. And here we can also see what time periods the texts we have represent. So you can see that we have considerably more texts from the last few years, simply because it's easier to access texts that were already created in a digital format. Yeah. So at the very beginning, you have a choice between a simple, an extended, or an advanced search. The simple search is just you put in a text, and you see if it's in a corpus. For example, if I'm having a moment of egocentricity and I want to know what the resources in the corpus are saying about me, because I've been to Mari L, I've given interviews to Mari newspapers, and I want to see if any of that is in there. I can just type in my name, Jeremy, in the Mari Cyrillic rendering. I click on search, and here I can find some mentions of me. So, okay, interviews with me have made it into the corpus. I can also look for whole strings. For example, Iktemet Otto, a famous Mari poem, One Quiet Grove. I can find here then how the whole poem is being said, or at least the first line of it. And so the poem goes: one quiet grove is in our land. So in our land there is one quiet grove. Eleste being in our land. And before I get to the extended search, I want to show you what happens if I click on Eleste in this word, in this analysis. It shows me here from which of the subcorpora it came from, the fiction texts corpora, and what the title of the resource was, the date of publication. And here we have the attributes of the word. So it's a noun, correct? It's in the noun, it's a noun, it's in the singular, it's in the initiative. So it is in the land. Yeah, dependency relation is not known in this case, and base form is el, land. So what is the dictionary form, the nominative singular? And we can also click on this button here to have a rudimentary dependency tree shown. Yeah, and if you are click on, like, for example, timuk, meaning quiet or calm, you might see that here Otto is shown in pink, because this is now the dependency. This is the syntactically superordinate element, the head of this phrase, because it's a quiet grove and Otto is a grove. Okay, so simple search is great if you know exactly what you're looking for, but if you want to add some flexibility into your pattern, or you want to into your search pattern, or you want to look for grammatical structures or whatnot, then extended search is a place to go. For example, if I'm, so I was looking for my name, Jeremy, but in the simple search, I was only looking for that as a whole word. What if I want to look for my word in all its inflected forms with like a genitive or an accusative or a dative ending? So I could say word begins with Jeremy, and here this is an important setting, or we can say that it's case insensitive, my search, so that even if my name was in all caps, I would find it. I don't think it's going to happen, but let's see. And if I search now, we can find here my name in the dative, for example. Now let's imagine I wanted to do the same thing with L, land. And so I say I want all phrases, I want to find all tokens that start with L. Yeah, so I mentioned that you should have a more keyboard layout. I was now for a moment uncertain where I had that button. It's not one I use very often. So I say word begins with L, and that should find me the L-ishte, for example. And let's search, and I have, well, 103,000 searches. So I'm finding a lot. L, great, Mari L, Mari land. So of the land, my land, blah, blah, blah. But here we have Elixanen. That's just a name, Elixanen. That has nothing to do with El country. Elavi, another name. Elementvlak, elements. So I'm finding things that I don't actually want if I was just interested in the flected forms of El land. But fortunately, this is an annotated corpus, so we can now instead look for not word, but base form. So that's like the dictionary form of a word. And I say base form is because I just want forms of L. Base form is L. And here I go. Now I have still a fair amount of search results here, but these are all just inflected forms of L, and I don't have all of this element stuff and the such in there. So yeah, so this has helped me now find like all inflected words of one stem. Okay. And here you can see if we have these 67,000 plus hits, almost 68,000 hits, they're not all going to be shown on one page. You can, at the bottom of the page that is being blocked by my Zoom taskbar right here, you can browse on to, you can browse through the results. And yeah, so it's all here. You can also download the results in various formats if you want to process them on your local machine. And this is something that is advisable in many times because even the best corpus is going to give you a lot of false positive results, like results that are not actually what you're looking for. You have to weed through your results, part of corpus linguistics. Okay, but let's say, for example, now I was interested not just in any form of L, but inflected forms. Specifically, I want to have forms of L in the local cases, the inessive case, in the country, the illative case, into the country, and the lative case, which has a function that's hard to define, in or into, depending on the context. So I say I still want base from L, but I only want those that have these grammatical tags for the inessive or the illative or the lative. If you don't know what the tags are, you can either in your search results here, find Elishte, click here, and then you see n.sg.ine. ine is my inessive tag. Do I have a lative tag here somewhere? Let me see. Well, I'm not actually finding a lative right now, but I am finding an illative with elish, and then I see the tag for the illative is ill. So for the lative, lat would suggest itself, but you can do two things. Either you can search specifically for a lative form and see what the tag is, or you can consult the PDF that is accompanying this, because here we've got under paradigms and tags, we have the entire nominal, verbal, and other paradigms, and we show here what the tags are that are used for all the grammatical categories. So we have here for the lative, the tag is LAT, just as I suspected. Okay, so now I'm saying base form is L, and then I click on this little plus here. I can add further conditions here. And I can say, and grammatical analysis contains ine for the inessive, or grammatical analysis contains il for the illative, or grammatical analysis contains lat for the lative. So I said an and here because I want, it has to be el and it has to be one of the three, and one of the three where only one of these conditions has to be satisfied, those I then link with an or. And with the minus, you can get rid of the things you just added if you change your mind about what you did. So if I search for this, I'm going to have considerably fewer results, I would suspect. Yeah, down to 8,498. And now we just have the local case forms. And you might think, well, how is this interesting? Well, there is a rule, supposedly in Mari, that animate nouns do not occur in the local cases. That only inanimate nouns can occur in the local cases. So what happens if I take a prototypically animate noun like ideme, person, and search it? Base form is ideme, and I want it in one of these cases. And if I search, if this rule was really as ironclad as some prescriptive sources will let you believe, then you would find nothing, but you find 394 hits, because actually there are contexts where this word is used in all local cases. And here you could have then a look at the context. Okay, so when is it actually used in local cases? Okay. Another example of something that might interest you. So the verb jungertash in Mari, to call by phone. If you are just studying Mari, so this is now an example where this might be interesting, the corpus is used for you as a student, you might not know what the government of this verb is. Does jungertash use an accusative object, as its counterparts do in, for example, in German, for example, or does it use an indirect object marking the dative as it would be in Russian, for example? So is it like, if you know German, is it ruf mich an or ruf mir an? Well, it's just a matter of direction in the language. So if I don't know in Mari, just like look for inflected forms of jungertash and see if I immediately see something. Not really, because I see André jungerta umash. André had called. If you call at night, or then a bell rang, that's not even the right meaning. So at first sight, it doesn't look very useful because I'm seeing neither accusative or dative forms. So, oh, here I see a dative form. So that's already an indicator. So this is like tudo, demonstrative pronoun, third person singular in the dative. But if I want to now just check what occurs more commonly right before or right after the verb jungertash, I could say, I want this base form, and then I click on this plus here, and this adds another search box where I can now define what I want about the following verb. And I want to say that the following verb, why am I saying verb? The following word. I want the following word to have the grammatical analysis containing dot for the dative. And here I find, well, only 6 hits. But you might think, well, what's the word order in Mari? And like, if you have been working with Mari for a while, you might know that the basic word order is subject, object, verb. So you generally would have the verb preceding the base form. So but fortunately, you can do a drag and drop with these search boxes. So you can just see, well, I didn't find that much, but something afterwards. What if I move it before? If I switch things around, and suddenly I have 107 hits, and oh, this is all looking very plausible with dative objects. Now for comparison, let's try the same thing with accusative. So I actually find 11 hits where I only had 6 in this ordering. But if I now, you have to look at your results if they're actually what you're looking for. And if I look at it, I find that it's like jungertash yönum oget pu, and yön is like a method or opportunity, and it's like they don't give the opportunity to call. So this is not actually an object of Jüngertasch here. As you can see here on the dependency. If you're really good with this infrastructure, you can use advanced structure to just look within the within the dependency trees, but I'm not going to get into this right now. Okay, and if I was to now analyze all of these examples, I would see that in none of these is the accusative marked thing the person being called. And if I switch the word order around again, yeah, 36, so considerably less than I had with the dative. And also here I have like Judem Jüngertet and Judem going back from Jud, night. And if you don't know what the words mean, you can use the dictionaries that are then given in the instruction pamphlet, where we have the Mari English dictionary, Mari Finnish dictionary, and Mari Russian dictionary. So Judem means at night. So this is just a temporal dative expression. It's not the indirect object. Yeah. And in some of these, it's like here in the a bell being rung. So this is then a different meaning of the verb Jüngertasch, because it means both to call somebody but also to ring a bell. And in none of these examples is it then the person being called. So the corpus doesn't hand feed you, the language learner, the answer you are seeking. But if you critically analyze the results here, you get the answer that you were looking for. Okay, another example, again, something that might interest you either as a language learner or as a linguist. There are two commonly used words in Mari that are both translated as beautiful, one being motor and one being silne. And as per usual, synonymity is rarely perfect. There is going to be some difference in the range of usage of these words. So if we want to have an insight into this, we could say, I'm looking for a word. The word is case insensitive motor. And since attributive adjectives in Mari are not inflected, it's always going to be motor. That's why I'm now using word is rather than base form, because it's not going to be marked for case or possession or anything like that. So I say word is motor, and it's going to be followed by some kind of noun is what I want. So I say that after motor, I want to have a word where the part of speech is noun. So I have motor plus noun, and I click on search, and I'm going to find many thousands of results, 7,000 results. Okay, and now I could look through all the examples and hope that I have the spark of inspiration, but better is if you look here, you have a statistic tab. And if you look at the statistics tab, you are going to get an overview of all the collocations that you have. And you have them ranked here by frequency. First, the relative frequency, and then the absolute frequency, the total number of hits. And we see that the very first thing that we have, motor Uder, beautiful girl. Second thing, motor Uderim, beautiful girl in the accusative. So unfortunately, there's no way at this point to have them that it's the same collocation, just in different case marking. We don't have a way at this point to have them grouped together. And because the third one is motor Uder, but just with the uppercase M because it's at the beginning of a clause. So these three are actually all the same thing. And then we have motor Uderamash, a beautiful woman, a beautiful flower. So those are the first ones that we have here if we're looking at motor followed by a noun. So that's giving us some indication. And yeah, and you can see here already that's the distribution in the different sources. We can see that motor, it's used a lot in fiction texts especially, but it's not used at all in law texts. Well, this is not very surprising, I would say, but sometimes you might be interested if you want to look at like a word or a construction, if it is typical of what genres it's typical. You might then this might actually be something interesting. So here we have motor. What if we now, to compare, look at silne followed by a noun. Okay, so here we still have 5,661 hits. So it's not quite as common as motor, but it's still very common. But now we look at the statistics and we can see the collocations again. And we see that the first ones here are silne muro, and silne sem, silne ver. A muro is a song, sem is a melody, ver is a place, peledish is a flower, pyrtus is nature, then song, spring, time, creation, melody, and only then do we have the guru. So it's used with different nouns, basically. So you can see that the range of the distributional range is somewhat different between these. And we know this maybe from other languages, like, for example, how like stereotypically gender roles would make it more likely to use the word handsome for a man in English rather than beautiful. And similar trends could be observed here. And yeah, so I mentioned the issue that we don't have groupings of things that belong together, like silne murum, that's like song in the accusative, silne muro, song in the nominative. If you want to further process the data that you have here, scroll down to the bottom. Sorry, it's again blocked by the Zoom tab. And we can say that I want the absolute frequencies in a comma separated values document, which you can process in data processing applications. You can generate the export, and you click on export, and then you can download the file, and then you can monkey around with it in other programs. So you get the raw data from the corpus, and then you figure out what to do with it elsewhere. So here I was just looking at 2 words. I want to give you an example how the search for patterns, how you can make it even bigger, how you can look for even more complicated patterns. So these new boxes that we have here, we can add new boxes and we can get rid of them as we wish, and we can drag them and drop them and put together our search pattern as we like. And let's say, for example, that I am interested in possessive constructions with a genitive marked possessor and a possessive suffix marked possessee with some other words in between, like how permissible it is, what can occur between a possessor and a possessee. So if I am not sure about the tags, either consult the document I was showing you, or do a simple search, for example, for, if you know a bit of Mari, you might know that Miljan Yolta Shem is my friend, where we have Miljan, I in the genitive, Yolta Shem, friend with possessive suffix first person singular. And we'll just do a simple search for this. And we can cannibalize the output that we have here to create our next search pattern. And this is then very useful in this corp infrastructure that we are using here. If we know we're going to want to do an extended search. So we can already go to extended, but we still have the data from the last search here. So we can still be browsing through it to get inspiration for our search pattern. And I click on Miljan, and it says this is a pronoun, personal, first person singular, genitive. The only thing I actually care about is a genitive, because I don't want to restrict myself just to the personal pronoun. So I say grammatical analysis contains genitive, and then I want to say it's followed by, this was a noun, so we can say part of speech. Yeah, because in this case we're only interested in nominal in nominal possession, because possessive suffixes could also be going on postpositions or so. Right now we just want part of speech is noun, and grammatical analysis contains, and here you can see the PXSG1 was possessive suffix first person singular, but I'm not just interested in the first person singular, I'm interested in possessive suffixes in general. So I just say PX. And if I click on search, it's going to find me the innumerous combinations of a genitive with followed by a possessive suffix marked noun. Yeah, 243 over 243,000 hits for this. But if you look at the results here, we are only finding things where we have the genitive immediately followed by the possessed noun. What if I want to now look at phrases where we've got something in between? Well, you can click on the plus button here. And we have word is any word. So that's anything. That's very useful if I just want to look at like any word in between them. I push it, I do with my drag and drop number, I push it over here. And if I search now, it's going to find me all occurrences where I have genitive and then something and then a possessive suffix marked noun. So we have, for example, so Kurmen, it's like of the 19th Kurmen Kokumsho Pelishtige, like in the 19th century's second half. So it's the century's half and it's the second that's in between here. Okay, so there is something in between the two things, but there can only, in these examples, there is only exactly one thing in between. What if I want to say, look for a thing for cases of 1 to 3 words, any words in between? Well, for that, we have this little gear here. If you click on the gear, you can choose repetitions. And repetition means that the pattern that you have here, it's looking for X to Y iterations of this. So I could say 1, 2, 3 times. And then it's going to find me everything where, like all examples where you have 1, 2, or 3 words between the possessor and the possessed. It's like Respubliken Obrazovani da Nauka Ministerstwie, like the Republic's Education and Science Ministry. But I'm also still finding things with just one word in between. But what if I want to find something where there are up to 3 words in between, but there could also be nothing in between? Well, this counter here on the repetition thing, it goes down to 0. So if you click on 0, if you enter a 0 here, it's now going to find you a genitive with a matching possessive marked noun and 0, 1, 2, or 3 words of any type in between. So yeah, and it's always advisable to just play around with your search queries when you're working on a research question and see what gets you the results that you actually need at any particular time. Next thing I want to show you along the similar lines of how you might have to adjust your search queries. So this corpus is annotated and it's also disambiguated as best possible with the limited amount of effort that we've been able to invest at this point. That means that in ambiguous word forms, there is a rule set which picks what in the opinion of the corpus infrastructure is the most likely interpretation when from the morphology, it could be several things. And we can see this, for example, if we are looking at, so I'm getting rid of all the stuff we had here and going back to a more simple search. If we are looking at the complementizer manen in Mari, literally this means saying, and it is used in 2 basic functions. It is used in combinations with quotations, like similar to English, that, just that the quotation comes before it. He told me that he went to Africa. And it is used in combination with final clauses. I went, or I made food so that the children would not be hungry, or something like that. Problem that we have here is that for some Mari verbs, for the verbs of the second conjugation, these past tense forms, like some past tense forms of the first morphological past tense, and forms of the imperative third person plural are syncretic. They fall in together. There is no difference between them, so they're morphologically ambiguous. And the corpus has to disambiguate between them. And this is something very difficult even for native speakers of Mari. So I would, in this case, trust neither myself nor the corpus to properly distinguish between them. So let's actually look at a specific example of this. Word is istisht. Let's again always say case insensitive, makes life easier. That makes us then also find things if we have things in all caps. So istisht manen, which depending on context could either mean so that they would do, or it could mean that they did. And so I have 14, this is now just like I'm looking at one lexical pairing here. And so here I have, in this case here, istisht is being interpreted as a past tense form. But looking at this example, in my opinion, this is clearly an imperative form. So the corpus is just wrong here. But if I'm looking at other ones here, let's see. Yeah, it's always interpreting this as a past tense form in this context. So this is something where, in theory, hopefully this question is going to be obsolete in future because we can just improve our rules. But here, when I was like testing this with one specific occurrence and I saw that the corpus got it wrong, if I am researching this matter, I have to adjust my search query accordingly. So if I go back to my my search query here, so my overview of tags here, and I saw what is the imperative third person plural? What is the tagging here? It is v.imprt.pl3. So we can say grammatical analysis contains this the imperative thing, so what the correct interpretation would be, or grammatical analysis contains the, in my opinion, incorrect interpretation. So I have now, by putting this or linking in here, I have undone the disambiguation, which did not serve my purposes in this particular question. It's basically the rules are oriented on the most common outcomes. So if you're looking at some marginal phenomena, you're more likely to encounter incorrect disambiguation. So we can say, so this is now, we're now looking for not just ishtish, but any verb in the third person plural, either with the imperative or with the first past tense in the third person plural. So, and if we search this, we have now 512 case results here. And looking at these here, we can immediately see something. And that is, so if I was like studying both of these two structures, that in the case of ishtash, a second conjugation verb to do, were converging, and where we had this ambiguity that we couldn't disambiguate, we can see that we here for the verb liash, a first conjugation verb to be. Here we have the imperative third person plural with ending isht, but here we have the past tense form with ending ich, because something I didn't tell you in the build up to this syncretism that we have with these two forms falling together only pertains to second conjugation verbs. And so if you are studying this particular feature, you can now ask yourself the question, well, do I actually need second conjugation verbs to be studying this infrastructure? Don't I have enough data with first conjugation verbs to look at the distribution of these two patterns? Well, you do. So what you could do now is, let's look at the statistics, and you need to know some Mari to be doing this, but we can now look at what the most common collocations are that we're looking at. And we have here liashtmanen, from liash to be first conjugation, kertash to be able to first conjugation, nalash first conjugation, to nemash first conjugation. So and only here we have the second conjugation verb. So we have a lot of very commonly used verbs here from the first conjugation. Unfortunately, we don't have tagging for conjugation class in the base forms. So you can't just say, I only want to look at first conjugation classes, but you could say, base form is liash, to be, or base form is, you can now let yourself be inspired by the most common hits here, is kertas, or base form is base form is kertas, or base form is nalash, or base form is tunemash. And like, you can, depends on how exact you want to be, but you can like you can have the 10 most common first conjugation verbs you have here. You can add them in there, and after that, the further down the list you go, you have diminishing results, the less data you're going to get from it. So we now have these words here, and we are searching for this pattern for all of these. Let's go back to simple results, and we have, well, 180 results still just with these four verbs. And now we have cases that are very clearly, they're either imperative or they are indicative third person plural. So now we could search just for imperative third person plural, get rid of this. And then we have results belonging to one category, or we can look with the indicative, preterite, first person plural, a third person plural. And then we have the examples that are clearly then the past tense forms. And here we could see that that in this case, in this set of verbs, that the final usage with the imperative forms is much, much more common than the usage with this particular past tense form. And what was the lesson here? The lesson here was that even if you have a search query where you think, oh, there's so much ambiguity here that I cannot handle, think of ways how you can adjust the search to be looking at something where you don't have the same amount of ambiguity to deal with. You have a lot of data in this corpus, you have a lot of wiggle room. You can restrict yourself to something where the shortcomings of the corpus are less of a problem for your research question. Irrespective of that, we are going to try to improve the disambiguation in years to come. Yeah, and there's still 2 points I wanted to show you in this little video demonstration. One is if we have, and there are short descriptions of all these scenarios that I have looked at now. If it was going too fast in this video, just look at the instruction document, and the scenarios are laid out in a bit more detail there. Okay, so there is a phrase that is used as a conjunction in Mari, which is molan manashkin. Which literally means if you say why. And this phrase in Mari is used basically as because, a counterpart to Russian потому что, which is like English because. This is something that traditionally Mari didn't have, because causal clauses generally preceded the finite verb. You'd usually say, you wouldn't say, I stayed home because I was sick. You would either say, my being sick of this, being sick because of stayed home. Or you would say, I am sick and thus I stayed home. But you would not in Mari traditionally have said, I was sick. I stayed home because I was sick. But in Russian, you do this, and often, especially like when translating from Russian or so, people want to have a counterpart for this. So, and this is how molan manashkin is. It's like a neologism that is used as a counterpart for the Russian conjunction. And it is said that Russian type syntax in Mari was really fortified in the 1950s, when there was a time when there was actually in language planning, there was the thinking that Russian-like structures should be supported, because they make it, if you have them in minority languages, you get the speakers of these languages accustomed to them, and that will make it easier for them to learn Russian later in life. Because in the 50s, it was still not at all self-explanatory that representatives of minorities in Russia would speak Russian. So why am I telling you this? Because I am interested in the diachrony of this construction. I want to see how its usage developed over time. So if I just look I have my 2,613 hits of molan manashkin. regardless of the time window, however. But I could now click on plus here on the first verb, and since they're all going to be in one sentence, it like if we're now looking for the metadata, doesn't matter which word we look at because metadata is the same for all of the words. I say word is Molan and date. And that we had, like if we look at a random word here, we see the date here of this Molan Manashkin, this was 2012. So I could say date. I could say date is the 1st of January 2012, which probably doesn't just mean 1st of January, but also if we have things from 2012 that we could not associate to a specific date, we have it on the 1st of January. But so we could say begins with 2012. This is going to show me everything that was from 2012, regardless of the time distinction. Here you can see we don't have any distinctions within the year. But if I'm not interested in year by year, but decade by decade, I could just say starts with 201. This is going to find me the 2010s. I could say starts with 2000. And I can see that, yeah, I have some occurrences in 2000. And you have to remember also that we don't have a steady amount of text over the flow of time. So you have to adjust these numbers to the base, like the base corpus that you're working with in the respective categories. But we can go back into the 20th century like this and look at the 1990s, 80s. And we can see it's getting less, but we're also getting fewer texts as we go back. But if we looked at the flow of time, you see that it's not that much of a decrease going back here, and that we actually have quite a bit from the 20s here. We have this gap in the aftermath of the Great Purge, but yeah. Okay, let's look at the 60s. Oh, sorry, those were the 50s already. So we're seeing that as we go back in time, we're getting fewer and fewer of these, but I'd have to adjust this for the frequencies. But if I look at the 40s, I have 3 occurrences. If I look at the 30s, I still have 4 occurrences. But if I look at the 20s, I don't have anything, even though we have a fair amount of text from the 20s. So nobody, at least not in any of the sources that we were using, was using this in the 20s. So if we look at the 30s again, this is 1936, 1935, 1933, 1934, 1933. This is likely the first reconstructible usage of this phrase in Mari. So it's still at a somewhat rudimentary stage, but the corpus does allow you to look at usage of lexemes and of structures in different time periods. So, and the very last thing I wanted to show you in this little mini demonstration is, so there's a very useful suffix in Mari that is attached to both verbal stems in the where it then becomes it's the negative participle, or to nominal stems where it then creates privative adjectives, that is to say adjectives that corresponds to the English less, like hopeless or whatnot. And this has the ending deme, like for example, pale deme is unknown. And this is the negative participle of the verb palash, to know. And in theory, you could go to your instructions and you could see, oh, it's a negative participle, and I want to then just look for all this tag v.neg.prc, and then you'll find all the negative participles. But you're not going to find as much as you might hope in this case. Why? Because paladine, unknown, is such a commonly used word that it is in the lexicon too as an adjective unknown. And since the corpus disambiguates, it has in this case disambiguated it as just the base form of the adjective paladine, which if you look it up in the dictionary, it means unknown. Okay, so the basic basically the disambiguation has here removed the information that this is a negative participle. So what can I do if basically if the disambiguation has taken away that what I needed, if I was studying negative participles here? Well, here we have something called regular expressions that can help us. Regular expressions is basically a mechanism to have flexible search patterns. And it's a very powerful thing, to know. I've put a link for a little toolbox, a regular expression, a little sandbox, regular expression 101, where you have an overview of regular expressions, abbreviations, and you can play with it and you can test it out and you can see, you can get to learn regular expressions if you don't already know them. But we can use regular expressions in the search by saying that we want word is rather than is, we say regex, so a regular expression. And now I am looking for a word that starts with any string of characters and then has the dim in here, which because so the negative participle, it has 3 vowel harmonic alternations: the me, the mo, the me. So I'm looking for any string of letters and then a dim, and then I want to have the vowel harmonic alternation in here, and I can have that by just in square brackets saying e o ö. That then means either an e or an o or an ö. And then I search here. And here I have a lot of things that I don't actually want, because like vudeme is actually the passive participle from vudash. So it's not even what I'm looking for. But the second already, lideme, is the negative participle of liash, to be, to become. But searching for negative participles would not have helped me here because we have it in the lexical base too. And shundeme again is, it's actually then a passive participle from shindash, to place. So this is not what we want, but putademe, endless, from putash, to end, this is what we want. So you would have to, then sanitize your output. You have to make sure, you have to take out the examples that you actually wanted. But here then, by regular expressions, you will be able to find things. You could have a flexible search pattern that found you things that searching by the grammatical tags didn't, where searching by grammatical tags didn't get you the results you needed. So that concludes my little crash course of the corpus. My advice, if you're working with Mari and if you're working with the corpus, just play with it, learn the ropes, adjust your search patterns, and check what results the search patterns get. Check also what is not there. If your search patterns are not returning what you're expecting, look for the string itself and look at the tags in, like, just look for the words, look for a simple string and look at the individual tags in on the individual words. Then maybe you can find out why your search query isn't finding what you're looking for. And then you can also, in the course of this, find ways to adjust your search query that you do indeed find what you're looking for. So have fun with the corpus and see you around.